Dive back into the neon pulse of a world where every heartbeat is a countdown to the next big revelation. We capture the rhythm of the city and the soul of the survivor in high definition. Hit subscribe now and keep your finger on the pulse of storytelling.
The flour was still on my hands when they walked in. I hadn't had time to wash up properly. We'd been slammed since noon, and the evening rush was already starting to build. The smell of brown butter and cardamom hung in the air the way it always did on Saturdays, warm and heavy and exactly the way I'd always imagined it would be when I was a little girl, watching my grandmother bake in her kitchen. I had worked 3 years to make this place smell like that. 3 years of 6 a.m. mornings and midnight inventory checks and learning, slowly and painfully, that nobody was going to hand me anything. I was behind the counter reviewing the weekend orders when I heard the bell above the front door. I didn't look up right away. We had 12 tables, and every single one of them had been reserved since Thursday. I assumed it was the 6 o'clock party for the Mendez birthday order. I finished the line I was reading, set down my pen, and looked up. My mother was standing in the middle of my bakery. She was wearing the blue coat I remembered from years ago, the one with the gold buttons she only brought out for occasions she considered important. My stepfather was beside her, and standing slightly behind him, eyes moving around the room like he was calculating something, was my brother Derek. I hadn't spoken to any of them in 3 years. I want to be precise about that because 3 years sounds like an exaggeration until you actually live it. It was not a falling out over a holiday dinner. It was not a falling out over a holiday dinner. It was not a misunderstanding that got out of hand. It was a decision they made, quietly, deliberately, and it was communicated to me not through a conversation, but through silence. Calls that stopped being returned. A graduation they didn't come to. A lease I had to sign alone because the co-signer they'd promised pulled out 4 days before the deadline without explanation. 3 years. And now they were standing in the middle of my bakery on a Saturday evening, right in the middle of service as if no time had passed at all. My first instinct was the one I'd been trained my whole life to have. Smile, smooth it over, make everyone comfortable. I felt it rise up automatically, that old reflex. Then I felt something else underneath it, quieter but steadier. And I listened to that instead. I walked out from behind the counter. I kept my voice even. I didn't know you were coming, I said. My mother smiled the way she always smiled when she wanted something, wide and practiced and slightly too warm. We wanted to see your place, she said. We've heard so much about it. I thought about asking who she'd heard it from since we hadn't spoken. I didn't. This isn't a good time, I said. We're in the middle of service. If you want to make a reservation, I can check what we have available next week. My stepfather's expression shifted. He'd never been good at hiding things once the pleasantries stopped working. He put his hand inside his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope and held it out to me like it was something I should already know about. We need to talk, he said, about something specific. I looked at the envelope. I didn't take it. Not tonight, I said. It needs to be tonight. One of my regulars was watching from the nearest table. I could feel it. I had built this place on the feeling people got when they walked through that door, the sense that this was somewhere calm and cared for, and nothing like the rest of the world outside. I was not going to let that feeling get destroyed on a Saturday in December because 3 people who had chosen silence for 3 years had decided tonight was suddenly urgent. Follow me, I said. I walked them to the small room I used for private events, off the main floor. It had 4 chairs and a table I used for vendor meetings. I closed the door behind us. My stepfather put the envelope on the table. Open it, he said. I sat down. I didn't open it. Tell me what's in it first. He sat across from me. My mother took the chair to his left and folded her hands in her lap the way she did when she'd already decided what was going to happen and was just waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Derek stayed standing near the door. He hadn't said a single word since they'd walked in. Derek's business, my stepfather started. I knew about Derek's business the way you know about a fire in a building you used to live in, from a distance, after the fact, through other people. He had opened a landscaping company 2 years ago. I'd heard through a cousin that it had expanded too fast, taken on too much debt, and was now somewhere between struggling and finished. I had felt sorry about it the way you feel sorry about something that doesn't involve you. It's in trouble, my stepfather said. He's got creditors. There's a note coming due at the end of the month, $40,000. I waited. We went to the bank, he said. They won't extend. I waited. We need you to co-sign a bridge loan, 30 days, just to get through the crunch. The room was quiet for a moment. I could hear the muffled sounds of my kitchen through the wall, the low percussion of a Saturday service. The thing I'd spent 3 years building. No, I said. My mother unfolded her hands. You haven't even heard the full. I don't need to hear more, I said. My answer is no. My stepfather leaned forward slightly. You'd be helping your brother, your family. My family, I said, hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Silence. Derek finally moved. He walked to the table and sat down in the remaining chair, and for the first time he looked directly at me. He looked tired. That was the honest truth of it. He looked genuinely, profoundly tired, and I recognized it because I had worn that same face for most of my 20s. But tired is not the same as wronged, and I was not going to confuse the two. I know, Derek said. I know how this looks. Good, I said. Then you understand why the answer is no. She's not finished, my stepfather said, and his voice had changed. The warmth was gone. There are things you don't know about, things that concern this place. And there it was. I had wondered, from the moment I saw the three of them walk through my door, whether this was going to be a request or something else. Now I knew. Go ahead, I said. He reached into the envelope and pulled out several pages. He slid them across the table to me. I looked at the top sheet. It took me a moment to understand what I was reading. Then the cold started at the back of my neck and moved slowly downward. It was a loan document. It was dated 18 months ago. The borrower's name on the document was mine. I had not taken out this loan. The signature on the third page looked like mine. It was not mine. The loan was for $22,000. According to the document, it had been used to purchase equipment for a landscaping business. The lender was a private firm I had never heard of. The collateral listed was my business license and my first year of projected revenue. I set the papers down. I picked them back up. I set them down again. Who signed this? I said. My stepfather was watching me carefully. We needed capital to help Derek get started. You weren't available. I wasn't available, I said slowly, or I wasn't asked. It was a family matter. We handled it. You forged my name on a loan document. We made a decision that needed to be made. The intent was always to repay it before it became an issue for you. It became an issue for me the moment you signed my name to it. I was very still. I had learned to do that when things got bad, to go very still and let the noise happen around me. How much of this loan is outstanding? Most of it, Derek said quietly. The business didn't. He stopped. Most of it. My stepfather straightened the papers in front of him like they were a presentation he was giving. Here is the situation as it stands. The private lender has been patient, but they know about this bakery. They know you're the named borrower. If Derek's business defaults, the lender will come after you, your accounts. Potentially this lease. Which is why, my mother said, her voice smooth and careful, the cleanest solution for everyone is for you to co-sign the bridge loan. Derek gets through the crunch, the private loan gets serviced, and this, she glanced around the room, at my walls, my space, everything I had built, stays protected. I looked at all three of them. I thought about the 3 years of silence. I thought about the 3 years of silence. I thought about the graduation. I thought about the lease I'd signed alone. I thought about the $22,000 loan they had taken out in my name, with my forged signature, as a family decision that didn't require my knowledge or consent. And I thought about the conversation I'd had 8 months ago with a lawyer named Patricia, whom I'd hired not because I expected this exact scenario, but because I was a woman running a small business alone, and I had learned early that prepared is better than sorry. 8 months ago, a mutual acquaintance had mentioned, offhandedly, that Derek's business was struggling and that my name had come up somehow in relation to some early financing. I hadn't known what that meant at the time. I'd told Patricia about it anyway. Patricia had done some digging. Patricia had found the loan document. Patricia had advised me on exactly what my options were and exactly what I should do if the situation ever escalated to a direct confrontation. I had followed every single piece of her advice. I stood up. I need to step out for a moment, I said. I'll be right back. My stepfather started to say something. I held up one hand, not aggressive, just firm, and I walked out of the room. I went to my office. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I took out a folder. Then I went back. I sat down. I put the folder on the table. 3 months ago, I said, I retained legal counsel regarding the loan document you just showed me. I was already aware of it. I've been aware of it for 8 months. My mother's face changed. I filed a report with the Fraud Division of the State Banking Authority 6 weeks ago, documenting the unauthorized use of my name and the forged signature. I have a case number. I have a copy of the original loan document with a forensic notation that the signature does not match my authenticated signature on file. I have emails between the lender and a contact associated with Derek's business address. Derek had gone very still. I also have a letter from my attorney, I said, which formally notifies all three of you that any attempt to leverage the existence of this document as a means of coercing financial concessions from me constitutes extortion under state law, which is a felony. I opened the folder and placed the letter on the table face up. What you did tonight, coming here, showing me that document, and implying that this business would be at risk unless I gave you what you want, that is the definition of extortion. My attorney drafted this letter in anticipation of exactly this conversation, because this is not a complicated legal situation. It is actually quite clear. My stepfather was staring at the letter. His jaw was tight. The fraud report is already filed, I said. That process is moving regardless of what happens in this room tonight. The lender has already been contacted by my attorney and notified that the signature on the document is fraudulent. Their claim against me is not valid. My business is not collateral for a loan I never took out. I closed the folder. What I am offering you tonight, the only thing I am offering, is this conversation, in private, before anything else moves forward. You can walk out of here and let the legal process continue on its own timeline. Or, I paused, I can call my attorney right now and we can discuss next steps tonight. Nobody spoke. What you cannot do, I said, is leave here with anything from me. Not a co-signature, not a dollar, not a promise. That is not on the table. My mother looked like she was trying to find the version of this situation where she was still in control of it. I recognized that look. I had watched her apply it to every difficult moment my entire childhood, the careful recalibration, the search for an angle. I felt something watching her do it now that I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction exactly, more like distance. Like watching someone try to play a game on a board they don't realize has already been cleared. My stepfather pushed his chair back. He picked up the original pages and put them back in the envelope slowly, like a man buying himself time to think. Derek hadn't moved. Derek, I said. He looked up. I'm sorry about the business. I mean that genuinely. And I did mean it, even now, even after all of this. That was the thing about family. The grief was always tangled up with everything else. But I can't save it, and the way you tried to do this tonight, I need you to understand that this was never going to work, not with me. He nodded once. He didn't say anything. I think he'd known before they'd walked in. I think that was what the exhaustion was about. My stepfather stood up. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, I said. My attorney will be in touch on Monday regarding the fraud matter. If you have legal representation, I'd suggest you contact them before then. I stood up and opened the door. I walked them through the main floor of my bakery, past the 12 reserved tables, past the couple near the window sharing a slice of the honey almond cake I'd spent 6 months perfecting, past the small chalkboard near the register where I wrote a new quote every week, because I liked the idea of people having something small to take with them when they left. This week, it said something my grandmother used to say, something about how the hands that build a thing are the hands that know its worth. I walked them to the front door. I held it open. My mother paused in the doorway. For a moment, I thought she was going to say something real, something underneath all the management and maneuvering, something that would make this complicated in the way it probably deserved to be complicated. She didn't. She walked out. My stepfather followed. Derek went last, and at the threshold he stopped and looked back at me one more time with that tired face, and I thought about saying something, and then I thought about the 3 years of silence, and I thought about the 3 years of silence, and I held the door and said nothing. It swung shut behind him. I stood there for a moment with my hand still on the door. One of my staff, Maya, who had been with me since the 2nd month and who had a gift for reading a room, appeared beside me with a glass of water and didn't say anything, just handed it to me and went back to the counter. I stood there a moment longer. Then I drank the water. Then I washed my hands properly for the first time since noon and I went back into my kitchen. We had a 7 o'clock order to finish. A birthday cake, 3 tiers, lemon and lavender, with someone's grandmother's name written across the top in the careful cursive I'd spent a year teaching myself because I wanted the handwriting on every cake I made to look like it had been written by someone who meant it. I finished the lettering. I stepped back and looked at it. It was good. It was exactly right. I carried it out to the table myself, the way I did with every celebration cake, because I had decided early on that the person who made the thing should be the one who brought it to the people it was made for. It seemed important to close that loop. The grandmother's face when she saw it, that was mine. That was something, no forged signature and no envelope, and no one who had ever treated my name like something they could borrow without asking could ever touch. I went back to the kitchen. The Saturday service continued. The cardamom and brown butter smell settled back over everything like it had never been disturbed. My phone buzzed once. I looked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. My stepfather, I assumed, from a phone I didn't have saved. I didn't read it. I blocked the number. I put my phone in my apron pocket. There was a counter that needed wiping down and an order coming up and a small, particular life I had built entirely on my own terms, and it was waiting for me, and I went back to it.